providing a better airflow and better line of sight as well. And I know I skipped over this, and actually before I call on Bill or Peter, I just wanted to say that DEP has provided a file number and they did not have any comments for this project. And I just want to hand it over real quickly to either Bill or Peter to discuss the airflow component of this, which is an important part as well.
How you doing? Bill Rocco, Director of Rounds at Salem Country Club. Like Mel said, I just wanted to give you guys a little light or little knowledge about what we do growing grass on a golf course. We're maintaining fairways at a 1/2 inch, tees at a 1/4 inch, greens at a under a 1/10 of an inch. That kind of playability that is what reason we have superior playing conditions, a golf course that they want to play a U.S. Senior Open on, and to get those conditions really on any golf course, but especially ours, you need airflow, you need sun. You kind of can see on your own backyard is the areas that are in the complete shade are the weakest. And if you can just imagine 150 200 golfers a day playing on it, those areas can get trampled down, can get worn out really quickly. So it's proven that with more sunlight, with more airflow, the growing environments drastically improve. The plant's a healthier plant. It can withstand more stress and needs less inputs and is just overall healthier.
And I would just add too, Bill, that you were mentioning to us during the site walk how there's one part of your golf course where you actually have this industrial size fan to aid with airflow, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a real consideration for the Salem Country Club.
Yeah, no, we call that down there a pocket, a closet. It is an area that there's no air movement. Without the air movement over the summer, that grass kind of just melts away over the stresses of what we do to it. And we put that fan there to replicate a cooling breeze, but nothing can replace what actually nature intended over there. So that's kind of our hope to just improve those conditions over there.
I think with that, I would open it up to questions to the commissioner or the public. Thank you, Bill.
Through the chair.
Yes.
It doesn't appear as though there's any treatment from the fairway in the green and the tee onto into the wetland. Would you be able to construct a swale or anything like that to just help filter the pollutants from fertilizers and other sources?
I think, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, or Peter, I think so conditions aren't going to be changing at all here. So whatever the Salem Country Club is putting on the course, that's not going to change. And we're sort of improving the site as far as that's concerned by moving the golf path away from the wetlands and changing it from a impervious to a pervious area. So I think the management practices aren't going to change. So this project wouldn't impact the wetlands from a chemical standpoint. And I think that what's being designed will actually slightly improve, what's going on.
Anybody else?
Through the chair. So exactly why do you want to do this? What is the benefit? Besides, I guess where the green is, so it gets a lot of water. Is that the reason?
I would say that it's being encroached upon. The I think Lucia and Stuart could attest that the wetlands are right on the golf path. In my mind, when I was there, and I think the Salem Country Club has said the same thing, it's almost a claustrophobic feeling in that area. There are, so they wanted to open it up. They wanted to get better lines of sight for better aesthetic value, better experience. And let's see.
Wouldn't just,
Let me take it.
Yep.
Peter Fischel, General Manager, Salem Country Club. One of the issues is that wetland on the back of the left green. If you were a little long, you lose the ball. It's in the wetlands. People crawl in there and trying to retrieve the ball. If that wetlands is not there, the ball's not get lost, and people are not gonna come into the wetlands. Second thing is we want to improve the growing conditions. As Bill explained, we need sunlight and we need airflow. That's the two reasons.
or wouldn't just removal of the 20 trees help with that? Opening up, getting away the claustrophobic feeling?
Right, but it wouldn't address the playability issue.
So what you're saying is that that location, that players have to like trudge through water and wet grounds to retrieve their balls?
Right, let me share my screen again.
Yeah.
Where is it? Give me 1 second, please. Okay. Okay, you see on your left-hand side, this is the 6th green. And the wetland is right below the 6th green. The moment you touch long, everything ends up in the wetland, and people just, nobody likes to lose a golf ball. So, and that's the area which is the playability issue. And just removing the trees would help with the sun flow, but it wouldn't address the playability issue in the octagon behind 6th green.
All right, so what you're saying is people are walking through that section of the wetlands that you have designated here
Correct.
frequently, okay.
Can you point out where the trees are that you're going to be removing? Which trees you're proposing? Because there's a lot of trees here.
The down here.
Yeah, I was going to say on
Yeah.
the plans, each tree is specifically pointed out, which ones you can see there. Actually, I think,
Are they the darker ones?
yeah, exactly. It's actually on the previous sheet, which I don't think Peter has right now, but on C100, it specifically, there's a call out for each tree. It says tree to be removed. On this one though, you can see it as the darker circled trees.
And I mean, Mel, I think it's worth mentioning also is that a lot of the trees we selected are already on the way out, already gone.
Yep.
Are going to help the other trees when they're gone, and leaning becoming a safety issue. That's where it wasn't really just kind of random.
Yeah, and I would say that Lucia and Stuart were there, and we showed them, specifically the trees, and I think that they can attest that these were not healthy trees.
Through the chair again. So on that, the drawing you just showed, you had the new proposed cart path. So presently in that same drawing, where is the old cart path?
Where the green line was, I think.
Yeah, it was just above the green line.
Could you go back to that?
Sure, 1 second. Before I go back there, I want to show you a historic. That's how it was before 95 was erected. There was absolutely no wetlands. There was nothing over there. That's when the golf course was built. So no.
And so what this picture is showing, if I can jump into, the red area is the area that we're discussing right now. And we overlaid the current alignment of I-95, and then we showed where the current wetlands were delineated, which is that blue line. So we could see how far the wetlands have encroached up to the current area that we're discussing now. And that's why we're looking to just, reclaim a little bit of it. And really, we're just moving it about 200 feet to the right, to the east, sorry.
Okay.
So on that drawing with the proposed cartway, can
Oh.
you
Yeah, right back.
the old cartway is relation?
The old pathway is right down here.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
That's the old pathway.
Yeah.
And it moves. It's right by the wetlands, and it will move in between the the green and the T's. So
All right, thank you.
which prohibits people throwing stuff into the wetlands because they're not getting close to it. So.
Is anyone speaking?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I am, if I could, I'm just concerned about the general wetlands that would be losing in this plan. I'm wondering if you're interested in the tree removal part without the, that triangle or whatever you called it, being lost, the wetlands being lost there.
Peter, can you just pull up the plan again? I just want to make sure we're talking about the same place.
I don't think,
Whatever that thing is, what did you call that?
So are you talking about that place that Peter was just circling?
Yeah, where the balls fall in. Where
Okay, that
people have to
place.
go in to get their balls. There's no, like you have you've proposed a solution for the removed trees. You're going to plant 20 other trees somewhere else on your property. But I guess what I'm concerned about is that piece of wetlands, just, general loss.
So we're
it
also,
would be replicated on the right bottom of the screen with all those lines. That's a bigger wetland than all the by 700 something square feet than we're trying to impact. So we're actually creating more wetland than it would they are right now.
that's exactly correct. We're required to replicate all of the bordering and isolated vegetated wetlands that we're impacting. And we're doing that and actually this is something that I didn't even mention, which I should have. I'm very sorry. So we are replicating wetlands at this site. And it's 700 square feet more than what needs to be replicated by the standards. So in fact, we're providing additional wetlands to this area in general.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Through the chair,
Go ahead, Travis.
are these wetlands going to be more valuable than the existing wetlands to wildlife?
They're going to be the same. We have a wetland replication plan, and so we're providing a variety of shrubs, ferns, a wetland seed mix for ground cover. And so what we're providing is what's already there. We're using the same species as what's there. We're basically mimicking what is there right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Lucia, is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak on this?
There's 3 people in the audience. If you would like to speak for or against this, please raise your hand. I don't think they are. But I did receive a email earlier today from a woman who cannot be here. I don't have the email pulled up, but she's concerned with wildlife. I believe she's been emailing back and forth with Weston and Sampson. She is concerned that if you do work in the spring, you're going to kill young wildlife. So she's hoping that you guys could condition it that the work starts late fall.
So my response to that is the biggest area of impact within the BVW, I think she said she was worried about the squirrels, is this area right in the middle south of the green line. And if you look in there, we're not removing any trees, which is where the squirrels would be. Even if we were removing a tree or two in this area, we're talking about 15 feet into the forest. This is a huge forest, so squirrels can certainly move 15 feet south. That being said, there are no trees in this area. So in my mind, it doesn't really pose a hazard to the squirrels.
I think she was concerned with the birds. I'm definitely not concerned with the squirrels or the chipmunks. But I can't remember exactly what she said, but I mean, I can pull the email up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll look at the email real quick that you forwarded it to me, Lucia. Let me see if I can find it. She's worried about disturbing mothers and young babies. Oh, migratory bird nests in the trees. So again, I'd go back to the trees. There aren't any trees in that area.
But you're removing 20 trees.
I see what you're saying.
Talking about.
Gotcha. Well, I would say that the Salem Country Club is not averse to modifying the project schedule timeline. If that's what would make or break this approval, then certainly, and I don't want to speak for the Salem Country Club, so maybe Bill and Peter, you could chime in, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. Again, I would say these trees, it's a huge forest, and I'm not concerned.
I mean, the best time to remove the trees was January, because the ground is frozen, because otherwise you create a lot of damage in there. So I don't think there are any young mothers in January in Peabody. Young birds in January, I don't think exist in those trees in January. So.
Oh, she does mention the eastern gray squirrel in this email. I'm just trying to see what she's proposing for a timeline. Oh, she said it could be minimized by choosing late fall to start the work.
That works for us.
I think basically she's probably suggesting the migratory birds will have left by then.
And that would make sense, sure. Yep.
Yeah, and I think Peter made a good point too. You don't really see a lot of babies getting spawned in January, so.
Exactly. Yep. So if that's something that you want to put in your order of conditions, I don't see any reason why not.
Will there be a schedule of activities proposed for this project?
I would say that there isn't a schedule that I've seen. I think it was mostly, my understanding is that it was going to be based on Conservation Commission approval. If you want sort of a more detailed schedule, that's something that I'm sure the Salem Country Club could provide you.
I guess I'm looking for start, and end for the project. And if there's issues like taking wetlands and replicating them, when that will take place.
Yeah, I can speak to the
That's-
wetlands replication for sure.
Okay.
We would not want to start wetlands replication right now or through the winter. We would want to do it during the growing season for the wetland replication part of this project. So that would be in the springtime.
So this goes down to the bottom right-hand corner of the plan where you're replicating the wetlands. Would you be taking the existing wetlands that are down at the bottom there that, part of the T, or the other wetlands that are above the wall? I'm sorry, above the new cart path. Would those come out now?
I would think that what we would want to do is do all of the ground disturbance work during the fall or winter time, where just based on the time constraints that the abutter had mentioned before.
Of this year or next year?
Peter, I'm not sure if you folks would be ready to do it this year or not.
It would be next year.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's basically what I was looking for is,
Okay.
when would you start? When would you end? In the meantime, aren't those T's are active, aren't they?
Correct. Yes.
So are you going to close those T's off while you're working?
Yeah. While we do construction, we close the whole stump because you don't want any members near construction equipment. It's extremely dangerous.
It'd be dangerous for the guys getting hit with golf balls.
That too.
Anybody else have a comment? Question?
Through the chair.
Yes.
I think this is an excellent project. I'm really not worried about the squirrels. I would like to say, but however, Salem Country Club, I believe they're going to be removing 20 trees.
Mhm.
To let them do a one-to-one replacement of trees is ridiculous. They need to do at least a 2-to-1.
Just saying, put in.
We're also allowing them to plant the trees anywhere they want on the golf course. So I believe that's how it was left. 2-to-1 is more than fair.
And you don't have a problem with anywhere they want.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think that, it's to their advantage to plant them strategically on the golf course where they want them. It's going to be, but I don't necessarily think it has to be on this hole in this area. But I certainly don't think 1-to-1, to remove a tree that's 30 inches at breast height and then to put back a 2.5 or a 3-inch caliper tree, a 1-to-1 is ridiculous.
But what I would say is what we're removing are unhealthy trees and replacing them with healthy trees.
You know what? I have no problem with that. And I completely understand where you're coming from. However, from a wetlands point of view, the trees have value, however you want to put it. And to ask you to replace them 2-to-1 it's no impact on you guys.
If that's what it takes to get it done, be happy to plan 2-to-1.
Anything else, Bruce?
No, I think it's an excellent project. I think it's excellent for the golf course. I think they're increasing, they're doing the correct thing. And I just think that's the way to do it. Obviously, over the years, Salem Country Club has had some problems with the Conservation Commission, but I think in this case, you're doing the right thing.
And to that point too, I would just add, I've spoken with Lucia a few times about this, but there is history with the Salem Country Club. And what I would say is there's new management in town, and they have told me more than once they understand the history and they want to do things the right way. So I think the Salem Country Club would want to reassure you that what happened in the past is in the past, and they do want to do things the right way, getting approvals before things need to get done. So.
And one last thing through the chair, I just want to make sure I understood this. You're coming before us, you're looking for, you're looking to get an NOI approved, but you're not going to do the work this fall. You're not going to start it until next fall. Is that correct?
Depends. The trees, if we get it approved, we would like to do in January, and we plant the trees now. And the regrading and stuff will be done next fall.
Okay.
It's like 2 parts to the project.
Well, okay, but your consultant from Weston and Sampson said you wanted to do the wetlands reconstruction
in the spring, right?
Spring. So that means if I understand the timeline, you're gonna have a tree company come in with a crane or whatever, and they're gonna come in, they're gonna do the tree removal. I'm going to call it winter, just when the ground's frozen. They're going to come in, they're going to do that. You're going to do regrading next fall, and you're going to do the plantings in the spring of 2024?
No, 2022.
2023, I'm sorry.
Next spring.
2022.
Next spring.
Well, that's not what you said. You said you were going to do the regrading next. You said you wanted.
But wetland replication next spring, a regrading next fall, after the replication is done already.
Okay, all right. So basically, the project will wrap up next fall.
Correct.
Is there, and I'm not sure on this, some projects have a, Lucia, is it going to have to be a certificate of compliance on a project like this?
Yes, they are requesting an order of conditions. If this was an RDA, the DEP would have never allowed this to be an RDA, and Mel is well versed in the regs, so he knew to file a notice of intent. So yes, there will be. I would also, through the chair, I would suggest that you guys, I think it's already mirrored in Mel's NOI application or Weston and Sampson's NOI application, but typically on a project like this, I would recommend a standard order of conditions 1 through 50, adding that the work must be done per the construction period, pollution prevention and erosion and sedimentation plan, adding all the documents listed in Appendix D, the dust control, environmental protection, cleaning up wetlands protection, replication, planting schedule, the wetlands monitoring and invasive species management plan. And then typically you would add checklist L. It's projects which alter bordering vegetated wetlands. And in this case, it would be BVW and isolated vegetated wetlands. And I'm pretty sure this is most likely mirrored in their application. Mel, are you versed in our local checklists? Do you want me to go ahead and read what you would be agreeing to?
Yes, could you please? Let's do that so everyone can hear.
Yep. So it would be the compensatory bordering vegetated wetland and isolated vegetated the compensatory BVW shall be constructed prior to filling any BVW or IVW. That's kind of standard, isn't it? And I'm assuming, I feel like I read that in your application as well.
Yep.
And then the second part of checklist L, there's three parts of it. The second part is, it may need to get tweaked a little bit, but it's all revegetation and of resource areas shall be performed according to the replication plan on file and dated, whatever it's stated in the NOI. The proposed replacement area shall meet or exceed the general performance standards outlined in section 10.55 parentheses 4 parentheses B7 of 310 CMR. Should the replacement area fail to meet any of these standards, the commission reserves the right to require measures necessary to achieve compliance. And then the final one, and this is pretty standard, and I'm almost positive this is in your NOI application. So we would just be mirroring what you already said in the conditions. A wetland specialist shall be on site during construction of the wetland replication area and shall supervise its construction. 2 reports prepared by the wetland scientist shall be submitted annually to the commission, May 1st and September 1st each year for 2 years. Each report shall include an observed species list, relative abundance of each species, percent coverage of wetlands and upland resources, the visibility of the plantings, and proposed remedial measures to ensure that at least 75% of the surface of the replication area be reestablished with indigenous wetland plant species within 2 growing seasons. Said reports shall include enough photographs for proper coverage of issues, points being addressed. If monitoring data indicates that this objective cannot be met, a corrective plan of action shall be submitted to the commission for approval and implemented under the supervision of a wetland scientist. No certificate of compliance will be granted by the commission until such time as the replacement area has been found to meet these standards. So I feel like you might say 70. I think most people say 70. Our local ordinance is 75%.
Okay.
And then the last condition would be the trees. There would be 40 trees, not 20. So it would be a 2-to-1 ratio spread throughout the country club.
Yep, and I don't see anything to object to in any of those.
I was working from home full time after I had left my own corporate job, and very much
Motion to close the public hearing.
it existed.
Second,
I was
All right, motion made by Travis to close, seconded by Bruce. Roll call. Chairman Lazares.
whenever I could, and I needed a dedicated space that had.
you muted, Stuart.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Comack,
Yes,
Commissioner Athos,
Yes,
Commissioner Wojcik,
Yes.
Commissioner Kavicchio.
Yes.
All right, so it is closed 5-0.
Motion to issue an order of conditions with all of the conditions mentioned in the prior discussion.
second,
All right, so I have a motion for a standard order of conditions 1 through 50, citing all those I'm not going to read them again, the conditions that I just read, made by Travis, seconded by Bruce. Roll call. Chairman Lazares,
Yes,
Commissioner Comack,
yes,
Commissioner Athos,
yes,
Commissioner Wojcik,
Yes.
Commissioner Kavicchio.
Yes.
All right, it is unanimous 5-0.
Thank you.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, 5. This was a continued public hearing on a notice of intent submitted by VHB for CB 13 Corwin LLC, care of Carol Cargo Venturas, Kevin Donahue, property owner is Stall USA. Applicant proposes development of a commercial and industrial use property. The property is currently known as 13 Corwin Street, map 92, lot 006 in Peabody, Mass. It has been asked that this be continued till November of this year, and so no motion is necessary at this time. On to item 6. Continued public hearing on a notice of intent submitted by William Manuel and Wetlands and Land Management, Inc. for the Regency Realty Trust, Alfred DeMambro trustees, and proposed project is the construction of 2 buildings and the site improvements, paving, utilities, etc., in riverfront to the North River. The property is known as 11 to 13 Wallace Street, map 85, Lot 41A, Peabody, Mass. This item was also continued till November. So no motion is necessary at this time. Next, enforcement order violation order. Item 7, a continued enforcement order is issued to Pedro Polini for work located at 60 Warren Street Extension. Property owner has done various projects in Riverfront without a permit from the commission. The most egregious issue was a failing retaining wall and stormwater drainage pipes into Proctor Brook. I had reached out. There's a question as to who owns the property. If you look at the assessor's map, it does say unknown. We thought initially it was owned by the city, and it turns out there may have been a land swap between the city and PMLP or vice versa. But I asked the city solicitor to find out who owns the land so we can figure out who's going to fix this. Okay? So at this point, that's all I have to say. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Other and discussion items, tree requests. There's a request from Williams and Sparages for 0 Newberry Street, map 88, lot 7. Property owner believes the wetlands are not state or locally protected, and therefore they do not wish to file an RDA application to memorialize their findings and want the commission to review paperwork submitted to determine if an RDA is necessary. Personally, I think the an RDA is required because it will memorialize this project. Is there anybody in the audience? Do we want to open this up for a public hearing then?
I promoted, there's a gentleman from William and Sparages I am not familiar with, and I believe I promoted the property owner, Richard Bennett.
Okay.
Richard Bennett.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Chris Sparages from the Engineering and Survey Office of Williams and Sparages. Is it okay for me to present a memo that we submitted to Lucia that describes the situation?
Sure.
Thank you. We just to set the record straight, Mr. Chairman and members, we haven't asked the commission to do anything, but we did provide some information to the commission regarding the status of a isolated vegetative wetland on the subject property. This is the property that's located up on Route 1 North if you're traveling and coming out of Linfield into Peabody. It's just after and just behind the 7-Eleven and where Brothers Cucina used to be. There's a short driveway / access road that goes to the back of this undeveloped property. And it is owned by a group called JDT Group Associates, LLC. And there is a representative of the applicant present, as Lucia mentioned, Mr. Richard Bennett. But the lot in question, it measures about just over 90,000 square feet in area. And we were asked by the applicant to go out and flag a wetland area that was towards the back of the property. And we had Greg Hockmuth go to the back of the property and locate a wetland. It was an isolated area. Greg hung 12 wetland flags and identified it as an isolated vegetative wetland. Is it okay to share my screen so I can show you the plan?
Sure.
Okay. Can everybody see the letter on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to just scroll down to the plan, which is the last page in this 13-page document. So here's Route 1, and the north arrow is here, so north is to the left. And this is the Brothers Cucina, the former building here that's now Phytopia. and this access road that comes in like this. And this is the subject property back here, this triangular shaped property. The area that was flagged is this circular area here. This isolated vegetative wetland does not border on the ocean or any estuary, any creek, any river, any stream, or any pond or any lake. Therefore, it is not a state jurisdictional wetland. We also took a look at whether or not it qualified as an isolated land subject to flooding, which is another type of wetland resource area that's identified in the Wetlands Protection Act and in your regulations as well. Mr. Rick Salvo, who's also a professional engineer, such as myself, did perform calculations of the isolated land subject to flooding calculations. And what he did was we took a look at this isolated area. And an isolated land subject to flooding is something that has no inlet or outlet. And it's an isolated depression or a closed basin that at least once a year can find some standing water. And that amount of standing water has to measure it's not approximately, it's a quarter of an acre foot of water to a depth of an average of 6 inches. And so what we can do as engineers is perform engineering calculations, taking a look at the 1-year storm event. And so that's what Rick did using the NOAA 14 Atlas. He analyzed a rainstorm, a 1-year rainstorm at 2.59 inches over a 24-hour period. And we model how much water fills up in this low spot. And what Rick determined was that the amount of volume of water that collected was only 5,663 cubic feet. That number is much, much less than a quarter of an acre foot. A quarter of an acre foot, if you were to convert it to cubic feet, is 10,890 cubic feet. So 5,600 is much, much lower than 10,800. So therefore, it didn't qualify as an isolated land subject to flooding. Then we took a look at the Peabody Wetlands and Rivers Protection Regulations that defines isolated and seasonal wetlands as an isolated area that holds at least 5,000 cubic feet of water. And so Mr. Salvo did additional calculations to calculate the volume of water that this depression can hold. And if I were to scroll up to those volume calculations at the beginning here of his letter, this is a sort of a blow up of the isolated vegetative wetland. And the calculations show that this isolated area can hold as much as 3,737 cubic feet of water, which is less than 5,000 cubic feet. So therefore, it is not an isolated or seasonal wetland under the local ordinance. We also took a look at the GIS information relative to natural heritage data. This area is not mapped as a certified vernal pool or a potential vernal pool. This is not an area that's an ACEC, which is an area of critical environmental concern, or an outstanding resource water, commonly referred to as an ORW. And this area of the property here doesn't show on any of FEMA's flood insurance rate maps as being a floodplain. So it's not bordering land subject to flooding and doesn't show on any FEMA map. So that was what we included in Greg's letter. And we believe very strongly that a request for determination of applicability in this case is not appropriate or required by the regulations. The RDA, or the request for determination of applicability, is found for projects that are in a buffer zone of a resource area, but we don't have a resource area and we have no buffer zone. So for those reasons, we don't believe that an RDA is appropriate. And that's the reason why we've chosen not to file for a request. But I am here, and so is Mr. Bennett. We're happy to answer any questions that the commission may have. And I'll see if I can switch my screen back to you. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Through the
Anybody-
chair, is the property in the back owned by someone that owns the property in the front?
It is not owned by any party in the front. It's a separate ownership. And I know that because we work for the gentleman that owns the other two properties as well up front. And they're different people, different entities, different interests.
Okay.
Through the chair,
Go ahead.
what is the applicant's desire with regard to development on this property?
I believe that the property is proposed to be developed with a commercial development. If Mr. Bennett is on as a panelist, Lucia, is he available to speak?
Yes, he is. You can't see him?
I don't see him on my screen.
I see me on my screen. Can you hear
Oh, there
me?
you are. I see you, Richard. Thank you.
Yeah, we actually, we have in hand right now a special permit for a registered marijuana dispensary, which has gotten a provisional license from the state. There was another one also licensed right beside us. And for business reasons, we decided, we'd at least explore another avenue. And the avenue would be a self-storage facility. And we have already filed for the site plan. We met preliminarily with planning and went through that. We have received, and I think today is the glorious day where the appeal period expired on a couple of variances that were dimensional because the lot, it's an odd shaped lot. It's got the two on-ramps in the back. The state actually took it in the 50s or whenever to build the on-ramps for the highway. And the prior owner had been in one family for, I don't know, 70 years or whatever. When they actually, what that depression there was actually excavated to use the rock and stone for the on-ramps because they're quite high there. And so they need to build it up. And then the family said, well, that was our land. Give it back. You've got a big chunk of it. You didn't use this. And so the state under the law had to of eminent domain. So they got it back and it's just sat there. And the one remaining guy who really ran everything was getting a little bit elderly, I think. And we had approached him and we thought it was a diamond in the rough there in Peabody because of the fact that you've got, the intersection of three highways right by it and all the rest of it, but it is sort of a back lot. And at this point in time, we thought the self-storage, which Peabody is growing in many ways, is actually a supporting function for small businesses too. People think of it as a place to store their Christmas decorations in the off season, and it certainly is. But it's actually something that we've noticed a real uptick in business and becoming a desirable suburban community, at least going by the prices of housing in Peabody. So we thought it was ideal. Laid it out, and that's when we had Greg and Chris go out and see if that was even jurisdictional, and they came back with the conclusion it wasn't. Having said that, there was some vegetation there, and we quite frankly had spoken to Jack Kelty, who's I think in Europe, so he couldn't join us. Reach out to Lucia, and we really felt we didn't have to do any filing. As Chris articulated it, an RDA is a resource area delineation or determination. So you need a resource area, and we didn't hit any of the thresholds. It wasn't even like we were close. So what we thought we'd do is to let the Concom know what we found and what our conclusion was, and not that I would ever question Chris's analysis and application of the State Wetland Act or the local ordinance, but just for complete disclosure and clarity, we wanted to bring it to you folks. But quite frankly, didn't want to go through the full expense and the time. And even though that we get along great with the butter, and if he were going to give us a hard time, I think he would have appealed to the variance. Still, it's for a zillion reasons. It just was better, we thought, to go explain what we found and then find out if we were missing something, I guess, is at least in my my non-wetlands technical mind. So that's why we came before you.
current, the current abutter is that the square box or the rectangular box that's just below you towards Route 1?
Yeah, there are actually two lots that,
Yeah.
well, maybe we might even hit Bertucci's in one corner, but the primary abutter is the old, I think it's Dick's Power Equipment, which as you come in, that drive that's shown is on the left. That is a separate legal lot. And then to the right of that entryway is the old Brothers Cuisine and the existing 7-Eleven. The Brothers Cuisine is being turned in. They also got an R&D license. And they've already started construction on that. And those two, though they're separate legal entities, that's really one family. It's one abutter. And we told them what we're doing. I think they'd love it if we gave up our special permit to compete with them. So they've been very supportive of the new use, and it's less traffic, it's less impact in many ways, and yet a good tax revenue base for the city too. So, and as I said, we love it. It was a piece. It's one of those pieces that just sort of was always there, but you had two ramps for interstate highways and Route 1 that is visible to. So we think it's a wonderful piece of land. Just kind of been screaming for an interested owner for a while.
As far as filing for the RDA, certainly it's not an expensive thing. And my only concern is that as time goes on and those properties adjacent to yours change hands or become wetter, or your land floods onto theirs, the RDA would tend to stop that. It would be addressed easily.
Yeah, we don't view that, quite frankly, as a concern. The watershed, Chris can address this more than me, comes from the mammoth embankment that the state put in for the highways, but they're interstate highways. And then there's the one abutter who was paved right up to his property line. So I would, if I had a question, something I for underwriting purposes in the future, or clarity, I would, we've now made our analysis public, not only to you folks, but we copied in planning. So it's part of the permitting record, and it just wasn't even a close call. So the reason I do it, if it were close, would be, I call it underwriting, so you have something of record. So it just wasn't even close enough to do that, and it adds another month, which is not the end of everything. It's another month. We'd rather, although every permitting agency in Peabody seems to want us to go to everybody else first, but we're down to getting our land use approvals and now going to planning to sort of make sure that the layout and the aesthetic of it is fine, except for you folks. And I'd really feel better if we could complete that process, without having any other permit hanging out there potentially. And again, we feel comfortable. We have my partner, who's not the initials in the name, by the way, are my partner's three children's first initials. So, but Matt couldn't make it, and he does a lot more. I'm more on the finance and underwriting, and I just it didn't rise to the level where I would say, hey, let's do belt and suspenders. I mean, it was, as Chris gave you the numbers, it was markedly off of anything that could be argued. And it was, it's man-made, anything else. We're not touching it. We're outside of it. Technically, even if that were somehow a resource area, we're only in the buffer of it. So you put all that together, although you articulate the very concerns I sort of start with when I look at a project, it didn't rise to even that level.
Today.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
I just feel like we're getting off the topic of wetland, and at this point, we really don't need to know what they're doing with the site. I do not agree with Chris Sparage's in his idea of an RDA. This is not an ANRAD, a notice of resource area delineation. What I have been suggesting for months now to Jack Kelty and to the applicant and through Greg Hawkmouth is that The prudent thing to do would be to file an RDA, because that way this is memorialized forever. It's, well, for 3 years at least, it's memorialized. If someone goes on right now and looks on GIS, they're going to see a wetland blob there. And it's going to look really silly that the commission just approved this on a meeting. So all we'll have is on a piece of paper or on the city's website, because I don't even print the minutes anymore, a motion that you guys approved this, or they can go onto a YouTube video. I feel like an RDA, a determination of applicability, in the end will memorialize this, and it's the prudent way to do this. And they've known about this since, I'm pretty sure, July. So you can't really use extending it a month and a month. This was the choice that they decided to do. And just a couple examples of, the commission has done determinations on Army Corps wetlands over on the Birch Street property. They basically, Greg Hockman actually flagged it and said, these are Army Corps wetlands. So the Concom is out of it. All they had to do was file a self-verification form with the Army Corps, and I'm out of that. That was memorialized in an RDA. The Marchese property, which was just in front of you guys a couple months ago, Bill Manuel, it was next to Huntington Woods. You guys memorialized that there was no wetlands, no riverfront, no, remember you made this huge motion about that there's no wetlands anywhere. And then 68 Prospect Street, that was for a detention basin. So, I mean, in essence, it's actually protecting the property owner, and it also makes the commission look like they're doing their due diligence. So I just want to go on record. I feel like the proper way to handle this would be through an RDA application.
Through Chair, this isn't a public hearing. The public's not invited. I mean, they're not here to speak. I really don't know what permission we're going to be giving. I don't want permission not to file an RDA.
Actually, I don't think we're asking for permission. I don't think we're asking for permission. We did our analysis. I think it was going back, and Lucia's correct that we had started a dialogue again, because we didn't want anybody to think we were doing something that wasn't allowed. And so that it took a little while to get the surveyor out there, survey the flags, to get the engineer to do the calculations. And then about a month ago, just a couple months after we started the dialogue, we submitted it to the Concom. And again, it's not as though I don't think we would end up, if we were to seek permission, I think it'd be an easy and quick, at least on, maybe not the entire night, but at least our public hearing would be quick. I mean, this is public notice too, as is that we filed the same thing with the, in terms of the site plan. So it is public record. And it's, again, I would start with the Wetlands Act and your own ordinance. And I think Chris correctly said that there's a prerequisite to filing an RDA, which is to say there's some resource area. But I'm not suggesting that the commission is, if somebody wanted to, couldn't go and take a piece of the Gobi Desert that's, now in Peabody and say, hey, we've got no wetlands, and request that you make a formal finding. We're really not requesting that. Again, we wanted to bring it to you. If we're missing something, not again that I would question Greg and Chris, but if we're missing something, or there's a reason other than sort of our underwriting, which I keep hearing, and we're comfortable with it, then we certainly wanted to have the dialogue with you folks.
Well, I'm not.
Go ahead.
Permission not to file an RDA, and that's basically what it comes down to. You're saying you don't think it's necessary, and you're going to ask for our approval to say, yeah, it's not necessary. There's going to be some kind of vote on public record. So I don't think it's a big deal to go to the RDA. I think you spend enough time to and money to have done that without having to avoid that whole thing. So that's the way I feel.
Right. Again, Mr. Chairman, through you, Chris Sparagus. We're not asking the commission to do anything. We're just coming here tonight as a courtesy. And we submitted this to Lucia's office, a while back, just as a statement of fact. And just again, out of courtesy, we're just appearing in front of you tonight to explain to you what we've done. Nothing more. We don't believe that we need any action by the Conservation Commission.
Through the chair.
So this is an informational meeting.
That's how we look at it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, through the chair. Through the chair, I actually agree with Richard and Chris. I don't see, it basically, they've done all the analysis. They feel strongly that there's nothing there, and it doesn't meet any requirements. It doesn't need it. We're not going to give it. I agree also with Arthur. We're not going to give them. We're not giving them an approval or we're voting. We're not doing anything. All we're doing, he's giving us information, and he doesn't want to do an IDA. I get that. And basically, he's not looking for our approval. He's just giving us the information. And I don't know. I don't really know what I don't really know what you guys are looking for, other than you just being courteous.
Well, certainly that's the primary reason. The other thing is if you are the arbiters, the enforcers, and the interpreters of this would be under local ordinance. So we wanted to make sure if there was something that we're missing under the local ordinance, or we thought our analysis was wrong or could be questioned, we should look at something. So it's certainly courtesy and informational. It's also, I guess, a little bit of inquiry if there was something that the commission felt we should go look at, or that it merited it, the filing. But just to be clear, we didn't file an application, therefore we're not applying for, asking for, or notice under the state act, anything. But hopefully it's a dialogue, and we wanted to make sure you guys were up to speed, A, and B, if there was something, now or after this, if there's something that warrants our review or a filing, then we certainly would we'd listen, and certainly if there's question that creeps in, if you know what I mean, then we'd certainly file it.
Well, I don't think there's anybody on the commission, myself included, that's a professional engineer. Unfortunately, we do have a professional engineer on the commission, and he's not available. But that being said, we rely on the experts to tell us what there is and there isn't. Chris Baragis is a well-known professional engineer who puts his stamp on things all the time. If he says it's not there, I'm going to have to say, okay, I believe him. So if it's not there, I don't know what you guys are looking for. We're not going to give you, we're not taking a vote on anything. So you're giving us the information, and you guys have to make your own decision on if you think you should file an IDA. Lucia feels you should. Again, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with Lucia. You guys have presented what you felt is what it is, and you got to go with that.
Anybody else have a comment? The only question that I see raised on the document I have is on page 3 of a report from Weston and Sampson, which is an excerpt from the plan. It shows wetlands label as BBW. Why?
So that's a good question. I see what you're talking about. So this is a plan that was that was drawn by Rick Salvo's office.
I can short circuit because I can explain. That's the older plan. I mentioned that we had put in that we have gotten a permit for, actually, the registered marijuana dispensary. It's a much smaller footprint building, and it again, it's also a matter of cost. So we had Greg go out and look to see if there were wetlands, all he did at that point in time was say, well, there's some vegetation. We said, fix the flags so that we can determine if we even are within a buffer zone for jurisdiction. We didn't have to do any other analysis. Once we determined we were 120 feet away from the closest point that for, in terms of, I think, an area that would be paved, anything disturbed, it became a moot point. So I think that that was a vestige, and that's public record. I mean, we filed that and we took the conservative assumption because there was vegetation there that we assumed it for the purposes of that filing, that it was BVW and regulated. And then that was the end of it. We didn't have to do the further analysis. When we then did a larger building and more disturbance of the site, we were within what would be the buffer zone, were that resource area, a regulated resource area. So at that point, we commissioned Chris and Greg and also Rick Salvo to go out and do the further analysis and calculation and, you know, site measurements and whatnot, because it is a little bit involved to do the particularly the volumetric calculation required a bit of engineering. But once he did that, it wasn't even close. You know, the square footage was easy. It was Rick Salvo had to do, when you've got his analysis and Greg's, the full volumetric one. But that's actually a vestige from something we had filed a couple of years ago. And for the purposes of that filing, we just assumed it. We didn't do any further inquiry because we weren't within a buffer.
Okay. The only last question I have is regarding the calculations for the flow of water. What time of year was that?
So the calculations of the stormwater flow?
Yes.
So the way those calculations are done, Mr. Chair, is that we take a look at tabular historic data, you know, like you would do for any analysis of pre-construction to post-construction, and this is the NOAA 14 rainfall atlas, and it's the theoretical 1 year storm event, which means that in any given year, this 1 year storm event is possible, and it has a certain number of inches that would fall over the course of 24 hours. So I think I mentioned the amount of the rainfall. It was approximately, it's 2.59 inches. That's the storm event that's analyzed for the 1 year storm.
2 to 3 inches. The concern that I have is that using historical data is the practice, but the reality is we have to look at what the climate change affects the storms we're receiving now, because we keep hearing things like 100-year storms come every 3 months. And I don't know what that would do to your calculations.
Well, this is by statute, so and by regulations.
Well,
so in the Wetlands Protection Act, it tells you how to analyze and determine whether or not something qualifies as an isolated land subject to flooding. And
under historic numbers, yeah.
That's correct. And that's what the regulations ask us to do.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I don't understand like why you guys are so aggressively against filing an RDA, because this is all we would have been talking about, and you would have walked away tonight with a determination of applicability that's good for 3 years, saying that the wetlands aren't local or state jurisdiction. That's what mostly everyone always does. I have never seen anyone fight so hard against an actual RDA application. Do you know that it's $20 for the application? That's it.
Yeah, we're familiar with the application fee, Lucia, and this again, Richard and his attorney Jack Kelty, we've been advised that this is the best course of action, and that's the way. That's why we're approaching it the way we are. It's not a resource area. There's no buffer zone, and therefore there's no filing required.
I know, but it shows on GIS. And so the fact that it shows on GIS, it shows on a plan that you have as a BVW. I mean, it's fine if the commission, if this is the precedent that the commission wants to set going forward, that everyone can just do this and usurp the RDA application. I just feel like a couple items earlier on the agenda, 58 Pulaski Street, they tried to do the same thing and reluctantly filed an RDA. And then a video surfaced of some serious stormwater issues. So, I mean, I hate to be negative and think that could be like a reason. I mean, I did speak with Greg and I did speak with Attorney Kelty in July. And they both agreed that the prudent form of action would be to just file the RDA and move on. I mean, you guys could have already got this permit in August and you would be done with the Concom. So I just don't understand what the reason is. You would get to the same point as we've literally, this is like the longest item on the agenda tonight. And you guys aren't even approving anything. You're not even going to do a vote.
No, we're not.
So through the chair, I do not want this to be the precedent. I do not want to have discussions like this in the future. I would prefer if they believe it's non-jurisdictional, then so be it. Like Bruce said, I believe it's their decision to make, because we're not making any decision tonight on this item. We shouldn't be hearing discussion items like this.
I certainly apologize for, first of all, I appreciate your time. Second of all, I do apologize. It's not aggressiveness. It was, we had heard questions back. Jack had at least never told me, hey, we have to go file an RDA. He did bring that up as an alternative. We met and even things like, gee, what if you go outside the statutory requirement and look at climate change, and it would have to be half again more. It just wasn't close. The reason we did this was because we had discussions, which, by the way, I appreciate, and an agent who will give you feedback, even if it's, oh, do this, but you can have a discussion, is just invaluable. But we didn't want to leave it at, we were trying not to be aggressive, I guess. We didn't want to leave it at, well, we've determined we don't need it. We wanted to give it to you guys, which is why we had done the analysis anyway. We wanted to file it with you. And then, quite frankly, again, wanted to make sure that as a courtesy, this is why we weren't filing, and then go forward. We thought we were kind of being, a bit extra cautious in doing so. It really wasn't aggressively trying to avoid it. It was more to make sure that you folks understood that we had certainly analyzed it and done it. And again, if there's a question or something we're missing, or we can certainly provide that information or go back and reanalyze it. And, underwriting might say we might be in a month or so. I don't know, but it's just unnecessary. It gives people an opportunity to appeal, even though we have a great relationship with our abutters. So when we looked at it, it wasn't as though it was a close enough thing to file. And so, but we wanted to make sure you folks understood that we've done the analysis. That's where we were. So I certainly apologize if it came across as aggressive. It was meant to be more a reflection of the fact that we had been, and our wetlands engineers are extremely diligent. And so that's why we filed. So again, I wasn't trying to set precedent or anything. I merely was trying to make sure that the commission was in the loop with our analysis as to why we weren't filing. But I wasn't trying to set precedent or anything. So I do apologize for that.
All right, well, through the chair, there's nothing to close. There's nothing to do. I mean,
We're not going to vote. I'm not going to ask any questions, but other than, I guess it is what it is. I would love to see the calculations based on frequent 100-year storm activity and what that does to, the current abutters in your proposed project. It's not required, obviously, by law, but it certainly is an issue that's going to come up.
Richard, you're muted.
I would be happy to speak with our civil engineer and Chris and Greg and give you that follow-up information. It can't affect an abutter. If it literally, next time you drive by on the ramp, look and you'll see the hole in the ground that the state left us. So if anything, it helps because I suspect there's some sheeting of water, but Chris could say that from the other ones, which will be unaffected by our development that ends up down there. But I'm happy to have Rick do look at a more frequent thing. Again, it wasn't even close. You'd have to go half again more on that volumetric calculation to cross the threshold. So, but I'll be happy to have Rick Salvo look at that, and Chris and Greg can supplement that with the information requested. Or if after the hearing, obviously Chris and Greg and Jack all know Lucia well, so she can certainly communicate any other questions if you think of it as the process proceeds on the other permitting. We're happy to get any information to you.
Yeah, and just to, as you know, Mr. Chairman, this will go through site plan review, and Will Politz will also be reviewing the stormwater calculations. So rest assured, it'll be reviewed.
Okay.
Through the chair, so if you guys, I mean, basically, are you going to accept this tonight? Because if you do, that means that they can fill in that wetland and there's no repercussions. I feel, and I can't say this enough, I don't know if there was a Freudian slip earlier when Richard said it opens it up to appeals and that's why he didn't want to file an RDA. I mean, that's kind of what I thought, and he said it. I just think the correct form of action, and we can fight until I'm blue in the face, I believe an RDA is the correct form of action. Otherwise, everyone's going to start doing this and they're going to start coming in. You're going to have discussions every meeting, no RDAs. It's a way to memorialize it on the RDA application. You check off a bunch of boxes that are on the determination and on the application. You would check off a bunch of boxes and it says there are no wetlands. There's no wetlands. Like, do whatever you want. That's the proper way, not to sit at a meeting for an hour just kind of going back and forth and like we're not really going anywhere.
Through the chair, it was my understanding we're not taking any votes. This was basically an informational meeting, and I appreciate the information. So that's, hopefully we can just move on to the next item on the agenda.
Yeah, we appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman. If there are no more questions, we'll get out of your way.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't hear any other questions, so thank you.
All right, so to be clear, you guys are not requiring them to file an RDA, correct?
We're not.
Lucia, there is no.
Yeah,
there's
we're
no
not
action
requiring
taken,
anything.
Lucia. This is informational only. We're not asking the commission for anything.
I know, but I'm saying, I just want them to realize what if you guys are not going to ask them to file an RDA, then I'm assuming they're going to go back and yes, this was informational, but you guys kind of, I don't know, you really haven't said anything. So when I start getting calls from residents, when they start filling in the wetlands, what am I going to say? That's what I need to know. If I had a determination, I can email them a copy of the determination and say, this was at this hearing, this is it, there's no wetlands, end of story, here's the calcs. But now this just makes us all, I don't know, it just doesn't seem ethical to me. It just seems wrong. And
Lucia,
if you guys,
Lucia, with all due respect, if someone were to ask any questions about what was done, that all you need to do is send them a copy of our letter. That's all you need to do.
That's where I'm going. This is setting precedent.
It's not unethical. These are facts.
Okay, I feel like we've been literally on this. I thought I was gonna be in bed before 10 o'clock, and for something that you guys shouldn't have to vote on, why are we talking about it so much? Like this, you do this on all other property. You made the Marchese people file an RDA, and they have nothing on their property. There's actually wetlands on this property. But yes, the calcs don't match up to what is protected under the local or state regs, but that should be memorialized in a determination of applicability, not just on a 3-page piece of paper shoved in a file somewhere. And that's your guys' call. If that's what you want to do, I will save this in perpetuity. And as long as I can save it, I mean, by law, I don't have to save this. And that's like that's a whole other issue. So you guys really should make a motion. Either you accept this, that this is not jurisdictional, or you tell them to memorialize it in an RDA application. Otherwise, I'm going to be put in a really awkward situation in the next few months. So you guys need to make a motion to accept, or that they need to file an RDA.
If I could just, first of all, you can see we have certainly gone to the city of Peabody and said where we're going. We're not filling any resource area in. It would be within a buffer area if that were a resource area. And that's part of our application. It ends up being a condition of the variance we got that we go through planning. The record here, when you don't have a resource area, it's not as though the city of Peabody, you're blowing it by them. I'm not familiar with the other projects, but we have to go through site plan. Site plan then looks at this. It's going to be reviewed by the engineers. Presumably they'll look at the stormwater calcs. If they come to a different conclusion or have a question, they could certainly direct us to the Conservation Commission.
I think you're missing my point. You don't need to come to us for your project. You can file an RDA. Ask Greg about this. You can file an RDA for wetlands delineation. You don't have to file an ANRAD. That I don't expect you to come to us with full-blown engineering plans showing us everything you're doing. All you would be doing in the RDA is memorializing that the wetland is not jurisdictional, state, or local. That's it. And that's why I don't understand why it's exactly what you're trying to do tonight. You would be memorializing and covering yourself legally for 3 years. And the commission would also be not setting a precedent of just allowing pieces of paper and our wetlands don't exist. I mean, the commission is giving up their power right now.
The commission doesn't have jurisdiction. The jurisdiction for what we're doing there lies with several other permit.
I know, but that's not up to you to decide. That's
I agree.
for the commission to decide.
I agree. But when we go through site plan, they then look at it. They ask the question, do you have any jurisdictional resource areas? We answered the question. We engaged the engineers and came to the conclusion we didn't. We gave them the memo. But again, I apologize. I'm not trying to make it harder. I was trying to make it so that there wouldn't be any question if somebody called up or anything else that, nope, they've reviewed it. If, again, it's not as though it's not being reviewed or reviewed by engineers or reviewed by the city. And if site plan comes to if things were wrong in our analysis, if the peer reviewing on the engineering is incorrect or something, then they could certainly say, hey, you have to go to the Conservation Commission. But
why would another department make the decision of whether this commission? I think the commission should be able to make their own decision. And I really think that you guys should vote now. I think you've heard enough. You already know how I feel. We've done this on other applications. Either you're going to accept this, that it's non-jurisdictional, and make a vote right now that you accept this, or you ask them to file an RDA just for the wetlands. That's it. It's what we have been doing. I've been doing this since 2006. This is what I have been doing the entire time. I am not doing anything crazy or trying to make you spend any more extra money that you have to. This is what we do. This is what we've been doing for 15 years. So I'm not asking for calculations. And I just think it's kind of arrogant for you to say that other departments are going to make the decision for the commission.
My point is, it's not as though.
Mr. Bennett, I think we should take our leave at this point. I think it's best to circle back around with Attorney Kelty. We've wasted the commission's time enough tonight. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. We're not trying to upset anyone, but we're not asking the commission for anything. We were just presenting information only. So we really appreciate your time, and we will circle back around with Lucia just to close the discussion after we have another talk with Attorney Kelty.
Thank you.
I guess.
Thank you very much.
Does anybody want to make a motion? at this
I don't
point?
want to make any kind of a motion, Stuart.
Okay,
You guys can do what you want, but I'm not going to vote because I don't see the point.
anybody else?
I think that we should have a discussion on precedent at a later date, at a time between this meeting and the next meeting on how we accept discussion items. And what the actual basis needs to be.
Okay,
I agree with Travis.
Is that a motion?
No.
no, it's just a statement, but if we have no vote and we have nothing that we can offer to, I mean, we can always say we need an RDA, but that doesn't make it so. I guess the discussion's over.
Well, actually, if you wanted them to file an RDA and asked them to file an RDA, it would make it so.
Okay. I'll take the lead on this and say, I would like to hear a motion for them to file an RDA. And have it done so that things are memorialized and we're not going back. Because I don't want to do this again for another 2 hours over something that's requires a $20 piece of paper.
So moved.
I have a second. Do I hear a second?
I guess.
I second it.
Because now you put it out there, okay? You put it out there that they're gonna, we are requesting an RDA.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. So now that you put it out there, I have to second that motion. Because if we don't, then we're making a decision that we didn't really want to make tonight.
That's right. We want to make the decision should be, I agree with Lucia. There should be an RDA for this because it's the best thing to do for them and us.
Okay, so the motion was seconded.
Okay, roll call.
Yes, I have a motion for them to file an RDA application to memorialize the findings, not for stormwater calculations and developmental procedures. Made by Travis, seconded by Arthur. I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call. Chairman Lazares.
Yes.
Commissioner Comack.
No.
Commissioner Athos.
Yes.
Commissioner Wojcik.
Yes.
Commissioner Kavicchio.
Yes.
So the motion passes 4-1 with Bruce voting no.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time, and I guess we'll be back.
Yes, you will.
Okay, thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you again.
Okay, have a good night.
Good night. I don't see anything else on the agenda. Do you?
I do not.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Minutes.
Huh? Oh, there was minutes, but Lucia said she didn't do any.
Move to adjourn.
Yeah.
Seconded.
And yeah.
Everybody raise their hand.
Good night.
Good night. And thank you.
Hey, everyone.
Night.
Thank you, PAT. Thank you.
Lucia, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.